Hey everybody, this one is about a social security number is a badge of slavery. First of all, there's no law that says that anyone has to get or use a social security number, but there is a regulation, and regulations are for government employees only. Social security number is a number for a cestui trust. No living soul has a social security number. This is in rebolens. Every taxpayer is a cestui trust, and having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust is to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. This is the D.C. Code, Chapter 854, an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, located at 31 Stat 1432. Chapter 56, in section 1617, it says the legal estate to be in the cestui use, which is a cestui trust. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as a co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive cestui trust of the U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc., and that's located in the Congressional Record, June 13th, 1967, pages 15,641 through 15,646. And if anybody knows what the Congressional Record looks like, or if they've ever read it, they'll know that that's a summary, because it's 3 columns, very fine print, and on each page. And that's a summary over 5 pages. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligation to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he is not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And that's U.S. United States of America versus Slater. And so the point being, and they're citing Cook versus Tate and a bunch of other cases, the point being is that a U.S. citizen is a taxpayer, and a taxpayer is a cestui trust, and therefore a U.S. citizen is a cestui trust. And a social security number is a number for a cestui trust. This is more D.C. Code, located at 31 Stat 1189. And at the very beginning, it says, and be it further enacted, that in interpretation and construction of said code, the following rules shall be observed, namely, the word person shall be held to apply to partnerships and corporations, so it's fictitious entities. And it goes on at the D.C. Code again. This is 31 Stat 1189. And actually, we're going to section 117 that's located at 31 Stat 1208. And it says, then in addition to jurisdiction conferred in the preceding section, plenary jurisdiction, that's military dictatorship, people, is hereby given to said court holding the said term to hear and determine all questions. And then again, further in the D.C. Code, located at 31 Stat 1230, section 252, the presumption of death. If any person shall leave his domicile without any known intention of changing the same, and shall not return or be heard from for 7 years from the time of his so leaving, he shall be presumed to be dead in any case wherein his death shall come into question, unless proof be made that he was alive within that time. And so again, they presume that you're a dead thing, a cestui trust. And this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mortmain. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account or tax, if you understand what they're talking about there, to tax this cestui trust for the rents and emoluments of the state, And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And so there's a bunch of things that we can point out here. First of all, the Roman cult created the cestui trust. And if a U.S. citizen's a cestui trust, then the Roman cult owns the U.S. citizen and the Social Security number. And if the legal estate is in the United States is a cestui trust, then the Roman cult owns the United States. And the Roman cult runs the so-called courts and wants to account or tax the rents and emoluments of their fraudulently created cestui trust. It's exactly what they're saying there. I mean, it's just like, hello. Anyways, this is more DC code. And this is found at 31 Stat 1265 in section 485. And it talks about citations. The said court holding a district court of the United States. And at chapter 28, fees of officers and others in section 112 at 31 Stat 1365, marshal's fees that for the service of any citation, summons, or capias. This is all talking about Roman law and the Roman cult. And a citation, a summons to appear, particularly applied to process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of the civil and canon laws by citation and libel. And it goes through and talks about cites all over the place. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 1. And it goes on. This is also the name of the process used in English ecclesiastical probate and divorce courts to call the defendant to respond before them. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition, citing Book 3 of Blackstone's Commentaries. So, again, this is all going to the Roman cult, okay? And the Social Security number is a number for a cestui trust. A tax, an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject. An excise, a tallage, a public law. Taxation signifies the system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of a sum of money called taxes. Some general principles of taxation have been said to be that the subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible as proportion to their respective abilities, that is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy. It's all corporate revenue. It's corporate. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists of what is called the equality or inequality of taxation. This is the Dictionary of English Law, Spleet and Maxwell, London, 1959. And in the Declaration of Independence, okay, this is nothing new. He is combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Okay, this is all martial law, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, and then even at 2 years, okay, this is an act to impose taxes in commerce only, George III, chapter 12, in 1778. That's like 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Whereas taxation by the Parliament for the purpose of raising a revenue has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no joke, Batman, that from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment whatever payable in any of His Majesty's colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America, except such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. All statutes are only for government property or subjects. This is a Canadian case, okay? In other words, Dominion legislation, even though it deals with Dominion property, okay? It's only subjects. It's only the slaves. U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, the Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or the property belonging to the United States. If you read any antebellum cases involving slavery, the debate was always over property rights. And antebellum, for those who don't understand what that word means, that means prior to the Civil War. If you're, there's U.S. subjects too, okay? Other property belonging to the United States is U.S. subjects. Taxes equals slavery. The taxing power, being in its nature unlimited over the subjects within its control, would enable the state governments to destroy the above-mentioned rights. In other words, if they can take a penny, they can take it all, okay? If they can take a penny, they can take it all. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission, and that is McCullough versus Maryland, 1819, U.S. Supreme Court. The privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States do not necessarily include the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. So the 14th Amendment criminally converted citizenship into the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended. The only absolute and unqualified right of a U.S. citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're involved in interstate commerce. That's exactly where it goes. Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens and not state citizens. Federal citizens as parents have no right to the custody of their infant children except subject to the paramount right of the state. A social security number, that's what they do, is they want a social security number or a date of birth, but the reason they want the date of birth is so they can fabricate evidence of the social security number. They can pull it up. And so the point is all of that's hearsay. Capitis diminutio, meaning the diminishment of status through the use of capitalization. In Roman law, diminishing or abridgment of personality, a loss or curtailment of a man's status or aggregate of legal attributes and qualifications. Capitis diminutio maxima, meaning the maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. With the highest and most comprehensive loss of status, this occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage, when he became a slave. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. This is the Commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Ulpian, which is a book that was written during the Roman Empire about 350 AD, and it was translated by this J.T. Abdi, a liar, and Brian Walker in 1874. To take an instance, when a person, sui juris, has given himself an adoption or a woman has passed under manus, all their property, incorporeal and corporeal, and all that is due to them is acquired by the adopting father or coiptionator, except those things which perish by a capitis diminutio, of which kind are a usufruct and obligation to services on the part of a freeman contracted by oath, and matters enforceable by a statutable action. Okay, and so statutes are all commerce. This is The Law of Persons by Joseph Long. And it's interesting to note that published in 1912 in section 1, okay, the very first section in that book is classification of persons. In Roman law, distinguish 3 kinds of personal status, okay, so persons and status, that's all Roman law. And then section 3, the loss of freedom, capitis diminutio maxima. A Roman citizen cannot legally be sold into slavery, but he might become a slave by condemnation for crime or by being captured by an enemy. Condemnation for crime is statutes or captured by an enemy, okay? And this all warfare. That's why they got to do the Social Security number. They got to fabricate evidence of the slave. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, capitis diminutio is the destruction or the kaput of legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, whites out the former individual, puts a new one in his place, where the old and the new, there's nothing, legally speaking, nothing in common. A juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of 3 ways. Juristic person's a corporation. 1, by the law of status libertatis. Notice status, okay, it's all about status. This is all Roman law. And this is capitis diminutio maxima. And then 2, by the loss of status civitatis. This is capitis diminutio media. And so anyways, the point being is that this is taken from a textbook of the history and system of Roman private law, and that's cited in Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Slavery is a status under Roman civil law. And they're talking about capitis diminutio maxima again, the diminution of a person's legal status as a result of being reduced to slavery. Status, okay, a condition, compare a state. A corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction it was created. A corporation is a citizen, and a citizen is a corporation. If they're assaulting you with the cestui trust, U.S. citizen slave, then you're in United States. Okay, I don't care if you think you're in Texas or any other place. You're in United States. You're in D.C. and the territories. This is an act to enact a uniform commercial code for the District of Columbia and for other purposes, located at 77 Stat 630, Public Law 88-243, and in Section 9.307, Paragraph H, it says the United States is located in the District of Columbia. And so, again, with Roman civil law, status is everything. There's no real justice. Justice is for sale, depending on who you are. Status deals with statutes and corporations. With common law, status is nothing. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's treated the same. This is People versus De La Guerra, California court case, 1870. It's evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community which is vested with any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the law of the United States, but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but the political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. And what they're talking about here is, this is why they rig the elections, because U.S. citizens, it's only U.S. citizens that vote in the elections, and it doesn't matter. The term citizen, United States, is analogous to the term subject in the common law. The U.S. citizens can murder their unborn children. The unborn are not included within the definition of person as used in the 14th Amendment, and that's the Roe v. Wade, the U.S. Supreme Court. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. U.S. Supreme Court. So what they're saying is that originally the U.S. citizen, because the Constitution actually talks about two classes of citizens, and what they're saying is that originally the U.S. citizen was derivative, the U.S. citizen was derivative and dependent upon being a state citizen, and because of the 14th Amendment, it is no longer derivative and dependent upon being a state citizen. It's paramount and dominant. And so, and then in this U.S. versus Rhodes, it says the amendment reversed and annulled the original policy of the Constitution. See, the so-called 14th Amendment is unconstitutional video. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Their term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. Okay, and so they're talking about interstate commerce here. A U.S. citizen, upon leaving the District of Columbia involved in interstate commerce as a resident, does not have the common law right to travel of a citizen of one of the several states. Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up a permanent abode in the country, being bound to the society by reason of their dwelling in it. They are subject to its laws so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it. Although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizenship, they have only certain privileges which the law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those who have been given the right of perpetual residence. They are a sort of citizen of a less privileged character and are subject to the society without enjoying all its advantages. Their children succeed to their status, for the right of perpetual residence given them by the state passes to their children. And this is taken from the Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. So you don't want to be a resident. One does not necessarily become a non-resident by absconding or absenting himself from his place of abode. Well, think about it. What are they saying? It's all on what you tell them. Residence, the fact of being officially present, okay? It's corporations, it's fictitious entities, it's government employees. It might be correctly said there's no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, unless the African slaves among us may be so called. And the only reason I mention this, I don't approve or endorse slavery at all, What I am saying is that if you're a subject, you're a slave. Okay, that's what it comes down to. If you're a subject, you're a slave. And so a Social Security number is a badge of slavery. The right of the trial by jury in civil cases guaranteed by the 7th Amendment, the right to bear arms guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment, have been distinctly held not to be privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States guaranteed by the 14th Amendment against abridgment by the states. And in effect, the same decision was made in respect of a guarantee against prosecution, except by indictment of a grand jury contained in the 5th Amendment, and in respect of a right to be confronted with witnesses contained in the 6th Amendment. U.S. citizens don't have any rights. The technical niceties of common law are not regarded. A jury does not figure ordinarily in a trial of an admiralty suit. The verdict of the jury, merely advisory, may be disregarded by the court. The rules of practice may be altered whenever found to be inconvenient or likely to embarrass the business of the court. Yeah, we want to railroad this guy, so we're just going to disregard the jury and we're going to just change the rules and we're going to railroad this guy. It's a show trial in the kangaroo court. A court of admiralty acts upon equitable principles. Gee, that sounds like the Roman cult. A libel of information does not require all the technical precision of an indictment at common law. If the allegations describe the offense, it is all that is necessary, and if it is founded upon a statute, it is sufficient if it pursues the words of the law. And so, again, U.S. citizens don't have any rights. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that a District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, that's military dictatorship, people, nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, 1948, National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company. The international law rule adopted for areas, this international law rule is basically because of this court case and similar court cases to it. It's adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction, federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only the statutory, but the common law of the state. The civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws. And a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to a federal district court, giving jurisdiction to such courts of civil actions. And that's found in Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, the report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the legislative jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President, June 1957. And that's a summary, or it's not a summary, it's a cite, but there's a lot of stuff missing. That's where the dots come in. Taken from pages 158 through 165. For the very idea that one may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any free country where freedom prevails, as being the essence of slavery itself. So think about it. What are they saying here? If you're a taxpayer, you're forced to work for nothing. You are a slave. A Social Security number is what a taxpayer is, okay? A number. It's a number for a cestui trust. It's a badge of slavery. And this is U.S. Supreme Court. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1, talking about the two classes of citizens. But the stranger that dwelleth among you, you shall be as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Two classes of citizens in the Old Testament. Okay, this is nothing new. There's always been two classes of citizens. Deuteronomy 10 and 19, love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's how they enslaved the children of Israel. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they are within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, again, 1873. Strangers have a social security number or a social insurance number, depending on whether you're in Canada or United States. And in Deuteronomy 23, 19-20, thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victual, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury. Why do you think they won't lend you money without producing the social security number? It's because they got to fabricate evidence of the slave. The bankster thieves will not loan their so-called money unless you can prove you're a resident. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and everything else be subordinate to the state. And that's Chisholm versus Georgia. That's like 1893 or something like that. 1793. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, and a state of civilization expects what never was and never will be. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and make merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. That's what they're doing. They're making merchandise of you, but it's because you volunteered into that social security number, and you're giving it out. There's no law that says you have to use it. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now a long time lingereth not, and damnation slumbereth not. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do, for he was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And so they're all, the fearful is people that are afraid to talk about this stuff and stand up. The unbelieving, I mean, I'm putting sights here, now that you've watched this, you can't sit on the fence anymore. You're going to have to either believe it or go and research it. I would say you ought to research it at least. Don't take my word for it. Go and research it. Find out for yourself. But the bottom line is that if you sit there and just say, oh, well, it's a bunch of crap, then you're not going to do too well on Judgment Day. But it's not up to me, okay? I want to stress that. I'm not the one that decides who goes to hell, and I'm glad I don't. Anyways, it behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it in the case of others, or their case may, by change of circumstances, become his own. And this is Jefferson talking about karma. What goes around comes around. If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chain set lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you are ever our countrymen. And nobody could say it better than Samuel Adams. When shall it be said in any country of the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance or distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not in want. The tax is not oppressive, the rational world is my friend, because I am friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and government, while we have absolutely nothing to boast about here. Our jails are bulging at the seams. We have Satanist order followers running around trying to populate the jails. The streets are full of beggars. The aged are in want. The taxes are oppressive. And we have a bunch of criminals in the government. Although I got to say, in all fairness, it looks like that we're going to have a regime change. And I'm hoping it's going to be a positive one. But at the end of the day, cash talks and BS walks. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping that the new president is going to be wonderful, but we'll see. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned that the sword come and take any person from among them, he's taken away in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. This is my effort to make sure that I am blameless on Judgment Day. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You're now watchmen. And I hope you're blameless on Judgment Day too. Circulate this video far and wide. I've got over 250 YouTube videos, the Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Churchianity series, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Government, Bar Members 1 and 2, Unidroit, Martial Laws Here, Quasi-Contracts and Roman Civil Law, De Facto Courts, all courts are ecclesiastical courts, DC Courts in Texas, Jurisdiction. Check them out and find out for yourself. Do your own research. I encourage everybody to do that. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. This last paragraph is made for all the Satanist order follower revenue officers operating in their private capacity under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966. They can take their privileges and benefits and put them up their rectal orifice. I prefer gold or silver coin. They can, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept their IOUs, their commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. If you find this useful, then you need to pay it forward. If you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. And send me your success stories. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page I deleted because of censorship on the part of Facebook. And my private group, Sovereignty International, is being deleted at Facebook. I have a Yahoo private group called Administrating Your Public Servants. I've got a Google private group called Administrating Your Public Servants. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. I hope you get something out of it and spread the word. And a Social Security number is a badge of slavery. Okay, that's the bottom line. I don't have one. The straw man has one, not me, and I don't use it. I don't give it out. Everything they want is hearsay, and I don't give it to them. And it is quite liberating, quite frankly. Anyways, have a real nice day.